Okay, and welcome back. Now, I'm going to tell you a story today I think you're going to find particularly interesting, and I don't think I've ever told this to anybody, which makes it pretty unusual in my life. This is the story of how I met Al Gore and Current TV got started. Anyway, there's another terrible story that I'll tell you about how my ex-wife and my ex-best friend threw me out of my business, but that's not for today. But you'll like that one also. This one relates to what happened after that. So one of the things I did trying to get my act back together was I opened a video bar and cafe on the Lower East Side right across the street from CBGB, which is now gone. I think it's a clothing store, which just goes to show you what happened on the Lower East Side. Anyway, I got this fantastic space. I was sharing it with a guy named Bob Holman who ran something called the Bowery Poetry Club, and that's a story inside itself. And I decided to launch this thing called DV Dojo, which was a kind of video bar and cafe. We gave out cameras. We had edit systems. We gave boot camp classes like we do now. We had nightly screenings. You could buy muffins. I mean, it was a dumb idea. It cost me a lot of money, and I didn't make any money, but it was interesting, and needless to say, not only ahead of its time, it's kind of out of its time because nobody ever did that afterwards, but I thought it was fun anyway. Anyhow, what happened was I had this DV Dojo thing, and it was running along, and it was doing fine. It was where I was hanging out, spending most of my time. And one day, this guy comes in, and he starts to ask me about, television and the future of television and what it does and all that. And of course, I told him the Gutenberg story, which you probably know already, and I won't waste your time with. And he went off, and his name was Jamie Daves, and he was like a huge guy, like 7 foot tall and giant. And that was it. And I thought, well, that was interesting. I had a muffin and a cup of tea and hung out at the dojo. Anyway, a couple of days later, I get this call from this guy, Jamie Daves, and he calls me back and he says, you remember me? I was at the DV Dojo. And I said, yeah, I remember you. What can I do for you? And he says, I represent former Vice President Al Gore. Now, this was in 2000, maybe like May of 2000. I mean, it was right after Gore had lost the election, so everybody knew who Al Gore was. He didn't have to say Vice President Al Gore. I knew who he was. I said, okay. And he said, the Vice President would like to meet with you. I went, kidding. Fine. Great. He said, is there a private place that the two of you can meet? Well, I thought, come to my house. I had this loft in Soho, and I thought, it's a private place, except my ex-wife, who was then my wife, was actually living there with me. But other than that, it was pretty private. So I gave him the address, and I went home, and I went to my soon-to-be ex-wife, who I didn't know at the time, and I said, hey, guess what? Al Gore is coming over tomorrow. And, she hated me already, so she rolled her eyes and went, right. And that was the end of that, and I didn't hear anything about it. So the next morning, I'm sitting there, and maybe I fantasized the whole thing. Maybe Jamie Daves is full of crap and some psychopath who escaped from Creedmoor. I had no idea. And I'm sitting there, and then ding dong, or actually my buzzer goes off. Well, it's a loft in Soho. You don't have a doorman. But I had this little video screen next to the door, next to the elevator. It was elevator entry. And I look at the video screen, and there's Al Gore. It's like watching TV, except it's my own TV set, and there he is. Then he goes, hey, Al Gore here, all by himself. He didn't have any Secret Service or anything. The election was over. And I said, come on up. So I buzz him in, and he comes up, and the elevator opens, and into my apartment walks Al Gore, all by himself, with a little yellow pad and pocket protector pens and all that kind of stuff. And I said, have a seat. You want a cup of coffee? And so we had bagels, and I gave Al Gore bagels and smoked salmon, which I eat every day anyway. And so I said, what can I do for you? And he said, I have this idea that I want to start a TV channel. And sound good to me. And he says, it's going to be history or politics. Now, probably I should have said great, but instead I said, Al, that's a dumb idea. He goes, what do you mean? I said, you should do something completely different. He said, what are you talking about? I said, there's this whole revolution going on where people are starting to make all their own stuff. Now, this is the year 2000. I mean, I don't think YouTube got started for another 5 or 6 years, so this was really early. So I said, Al, you should just start, everybody's making their own stuff, and if I were you, that's how I would start the channel. He said, well, that sounded like an interesting idea. So then I did the whole Gutenberg revolution thing, and you could see that he was totally getting into the thing. And, after about an hour, before he left, there was this noise in the kitchen because my ex-wife used to sleep late, and she got up late. Bedrooms down at the other end of the loft, and he says, what's that? And I said, oh, it's probably my wife just getting up. I said, why don't you go in and say hello to her? So he walks into the kitchen. He goes, "How you doing, Al Gore?" And of course, there she is, like, "Oh, it really is Al Gore. I can't believe it." So you know what? For all the alimony I ended up spending, that moment was worth it anyway. Anyhow, so Al Gore leaves and he goes away, and I thought, well, that was really kind of interesting, and I expect to hear from him. And then the next day, my phone, I had one of these flip phones from whatever they were, and the phone goes off, my cell phone, and it's Al Gore. And I didn't know it was him. And I'll go, "Hello." He goes, "Al Gore here." I said, "How you doing, Al?" He goes, "Great." I said, "What are you doing next weekend?" I said, "I don't know. I'm not doing anything, like usual." And he says, "Why don't you all come out to Deer Valley and bring them cameras, and can you spend a weekend there?" I said, "A week?" Yeah. I said, "Sure, great." So we went out, and Joel Hyatt, who was his business partner, had been the financial head of the Democratic National Committee. The two of them gotten together to form this cable channel. He had this giant ski house in Deer Valley. I mean, a ski mansion, like with an elevator and ski in and ski. Everything was huge. So I went out there, and they picked me up at the airport, and they took me back to the house, and I brought some cameras and some laptop edit systems, and so they said, "Well, teach us how this works." So I gave Al a camera, and I gave Joel a camera, and Joel's wife, Susan, who had been the daughter of Metzenbaum, who was the senator from Ohio, and Tipper, who was the nicest person in the whole group, was there. And I gave him cameras, and we went out to a barber shop. Al put on a hat so he was in disguise, and we shot in a gym, and we shot in a barber shop, and we came back, and then I said, "Here's how you shoot." I gave him the lesson, cut the carrots, and Fluffy the dog. And then, then we came back and we edited. I think we used iMovie to edit these videos together, and they could see that they had just made television effectively. So Al goes, "I get it." And the next thing you know, we had launched Current TV, which was like, fantastic. It was going to be based on this entire concept. Now, this is the year 2000. You have to remember how long ago. The internet didn't even carry video then. So, we went on this kind of university speaking tour thing, and kind of jazz people up and saying, "You don't need a network, you can do this yourself," and then generated all this interest among young filmmakers. And then Lisa, who I was just starting to date at the time, and I went out to San Francisco, where Current TV, this is like months later, had the ex-wife was gone by then, so Lisa and I went out to San Francisco, and Current TV had gotten this office on the Embarcadero. It had been E-Trade's old office, and it was just getting started, and suddenly these trucks started to pull up. Did you ever see the movie Miracle on 42nd Street? They come at the end with the letters to Santa Claus. This is what this was like. Trucks pulled up with bags and bags and bags of DVDs and VHS tapes. There must have been, 50,000 items must have come in from people who suddenly got the idea that, well, hell, I can do this too. It was the moment of the liberation of video connecting with people's naturally creative forces, the desire to make content. It's a very human thing to want to make things. And so now suddenly we'd given them a place they could go. And these trucks pulled up and begged and filled rooms with these DVDs, because you couldn't get video on the internet yet, and these VHS tapes. And all right, most of them were crap, but some of them were good, and a few of them were excellent. And Lisa and I looked at each other and went, "Whoa, there's something here." And Al came into the room and he went, "I guess you hit on the right thing." I said, "No kidding." So actually, this had tapped into something very, very basic and very fundamental. This is 2 or 3 years before YouTube even started. So the idea behind Current TV was inherently there. Why it failed, that's another video that I'll do sometime and tell you that story. But that's how the thing got started. And what we had tapped into was this huge reservoir of potential content. Well, that reservoir still exists today. And even though cable channels are still terrified by the notion of letting real people make stuff. J.K. Rowling is a real person who makes real books. But in video and television, for some reason, still the production company and the talent and all that, which is a crap to my mind. So anyway, the point of this was yesterday, if you remember, I went out and I did some pitch sessions with Travel Channel and Food Network, only stuff that is made by people like you who sent tapes to me, and I actually think they're kind of interested. It may be that 20 years later or 25 years later, the door is finally starting to open, but it started with Current TV and this very, very radical notion that people can tell their own stories, and that's what we believe in, and that, of course, is why we launched the VJ.com, which, needless to say, is a place the nexus for people who want to tell their own stories. And whether you're making your own video or you want to get a network deal for a cable show, I'm all for it and I'm all behind it. So That's the video for today. I hope you found this interesting, and believe me, there's much more to come. See you later.